Have you ever called someone a narc and then have been told that you can't do that? You're not a therapist. You can't diagnose people. Or even worse, you got called a narc back. Okay, the same. Like the reason I called this video before you call someone a narc, watch this, is because one of the things I've learned from my mistakes of calling someone a narc is that, yeah, it feels good in that moment, getting it off your chest, being like, you're a narc. But all you've done is let this potential narcissist, one, let them know that you're onto them, two, get them madder, none of which changes the situation you're in. So nothing actually gets done by calling people names. If you haven't seen my previous video where I go over the let them theory, in that one, I go over the fact that we have to give up this control that we think we have where we can change people because we can't. We just have to let them be themselves, accept them for who they are, and work on ourselves to set better boundaries or remove ourselves from the situation. What we can do is make a mental note of that little piece of information and keep it to ourselves. What I would do is find a place to write down each of the times you notice these narcissistic tendencies coming out. Like you could write it in a journal or you can write it in your notes app. Whatever you choose, just have it somewhere where you can refer back to it so that you know that everything that's been happening is not only in your head, it's actually happening, and so that you can see if a pattern starts forming. Because remember, we're looking for patterns, not a one-time occurrence, not a one-off event. We're not judging. We're trying to take note of how they consistently think or react to different situations. Because not showing kindness once is not that big of a deal. Like it could have been just a bad day for them. But if someone doesn't show kindness often, now that's a red flag. And that's why in this video, I'm going to share with you what I've learned so far about how to recognize if you're in the presence of someone with narcissistic tendencies. Because once I found out what a covert narcissist was and who the covert narcissists were in my life, I felt like I finally found the answers to why I felt the way I did. Why I never had confidence in myself, why I had low self-esteem, why I was so hard on myself, and why I truly could never believe that I was enough. So I hope that this can also do the same for you. And that's why at the end of this video, I'll show you exactly what behaviors and the type of mistreatment to look out for. I went down this rabbit hole about 2 years ago when I first became a mom, and I was starting to feel that mom guilt, feeling like I was a failure, like I was not doing enough for my little ones. Felt like I was not a good enough mother, good enough daughter, good enough sister, good enough friend, good enough wife. I felt like Elastomom from The Incredibles. I felt like I was being stretched in all directions, which sucked because none of those directions were for me. But being a failure was nothing new to me. I always felt like I was never enough, especially in my career life, because I don't really have a career. I have a job I've been working for the past 10 years of my life. Like ever since college, I've had the same job. And I had always had plans to start my own business online. Before I had my girls, I had been trying to start one so that when I did have my girls, I would be able to work from home and spend the most time with my babies. And the reason I ended up being like, screw it, let's just have kids, because my last attempt at trying to start a business online kind of failed. And I was like, screw it. You know what? Let me have kids and I'll figure it out later on. This is me trying to figure it out later on, which was a horrible idea because I barely have time for myself. How the hell am I going to start a business, and a profitable and successful one at that? And I think the reason I felt like a failure in my career life was because I didn't believe in myself that I can actually start my own business online. Not having a safety net, not having a reliable income, and just depending on me, myself. All my life, I've been told by my family and my friends that you're so smart, you're so talented. And that's why I find it so weird, because even though I had family and friends who seemed like they encouraged me, seemed like they were being supportive, and even with me knowing that I have a college degree and I have the skills that I built over the years, I couldn't understand why I didn't believe that I could do it. But then one night in December, after I had a really big argument with my mom, I was scrolling on TikTok and I came across the term emotionally mature parent. And when I looked into it, my mind was blown. I couldn't believe that there was an actual term for what I've been dealing with my whole life. And in that book, they mentioned narcissism, which is not something I ever bothered looking into it because I've heard the term fly around, being like, are you a narc? And have seen, a few videos of wives calling their husbands a narcissist. At that moment, I only assumed that narcissist was about men. But it turns out the narcissism isn't just for men. It's for women too. They just do a different type of narcissism. Women's narcissism is a bit more covert, meaning that it's kind of hard to detect because it's so subtle that you have to really be paying attention to even notice how sneaky it is. But it turns out that there is more than one type of narcissism, and the one that I've always heard about or seen on the TV and movies is of overt narcissism where they don't hide it. They're very much like upfront about how narcissistic they are and they have no shame towards it. Women tend to be more covert narcissists for the most part. And because of that, they can get away with it for a long time. And if you don't know what narcissism is, I don't blame you. A lot of people use that word very loosely without really understanding what it is. But to put it simply, to everyone, a narcissist seems confident, charismatic, helpful, but behind closed doors, they always want to be praised. They want to be told, like, you did such a great job. You're such a great person. And they'll be straight up with compliments sometimes. They'll straight up ask, like, didn't I do such a great job? At their very core, they're very self-centered people. They only really care about themselves and are willing to take advantage of people so that they can feel better about themselves. They depend on people and material things to boost their ego. They also think they're more important than everyone else. They feel like they deserve special treatment, and they don't really care about how other people feel. And each type of narcissist shows it in different ways. Because what I learned off of Dr. Armani's book, It's Not You, is that narcissism exists on the spectrum. And it can range from mild narcissism, which is like Kelly Kapoor from The Office, where she's like superficial, cares about gossip, always talking about herself, to like over narcissist, which is like Miranda Priestly from The Devil Wears Prada, Regina George from Mean Girls, people who are willing to be ruthless to reach their own personal goals. And for the sake of this video, we're going to be discussing the one in the middle, covert narcissism. That's the one I personally find the most dangerous and damaging. At least with the others, you know what you're getting. They kind of seem self-centered. You can tell off the bat the type of person that they are. And with covert, it's a lot harder to realize if you're in the presence of one. And because of that, that allows them to cause more harm over a longer period of time without getting found out. I mean, look at me. To me, it took 32 years to find out. I would have never guessed that some of my closest family and friends were covert narcissists. Covert narcissists are so good at pretending. They'll be shy, they'll be humble, they'll be insecure, but it's all a front, just so that you won't catch on to their selfish reasons and their sneaky behavior. And the reason they get away with it is because they're not overly mean. They'll be quick to act like they're sorry if it does happen, but that's it. It's all an act. And you'll know it's an act because they don't change their behavior. If you call them out on something, you'll notice that they'll be, oh, I'm so sorry, but they'll do it again. Like, they don't change their behavior. They just become more passive aggressive with their insults. They'll make you feel guilty for holding them accountable. And sometimes they'll just straight up lie, just so that they can have you questioning your own reality. And this type of behavior, when it goes unnoticed, can be psychologically damaging. I'll be making a separate video where I go over all of the ways that a covert narcissist messes you up. And so based off what I said, if you feel that you are one, the way that you can tell that you're not one is if it would eat you up inside if you purposely harm someone, whether it be with your words or your actions. Narcissists don't care about other people. And another way you can tell is if when you hurt someone, you actually feel bad about it and you apologize, either right away or eventually. But when you do, you mean it. And then you try really hard to not do it again. So what you might have is actually narcissistic tendencies. You just tend to be narcissistic sometimes. But as long as you still have genuine empathy for people, you have a chance at not becoming a narcissist. So there's hope for you yet. And just a random observation that I made about actual narcissists is that if you call them a narc, because they hate being criticized, they will call you a narc in return just cause. Not necessarily because you did anything narcissistic, it's just because they like to lie. So just remember, as long as you have genuine empathy and you care about whether you hurt people, then you are not a narc. Because in the end, all that matters is what you mean and how you keep showing up with your actions. If you want to take a deeper look into covert narcissism, I'm going to tag below a few YouTube channels and TikTok pages in the description that can describe it way better than I could and on a more professional level. So when I finally learned what a covert narcissist was and the psychologically damaging effect that they have on you and your self-esteem and your self-worth and your everything, it all made sense why I didn't believe in myself. It never occurred to me that not believing myself could have anything to do with my mom. She always pushed me to go to school, get my degrees. She always complimented me. She always told me how much she loved me. But that's how subtle covert narcissism is. It looks good on the surface, but it's all the emotional manipulation underneath that eats away at your soul. So with this new information and new rage, I go confront my mom and I try to set boundaries with her. I say try because I had only kind of just learned what boundaries were, so I wasn't able to explain them perfectly, much less in Spanish. I just wanted her to stop acting the way she does, which didn't work out because You can't control anybody. They are who they are. So I then go on to make another mistake, which is going to my siblings and telling them that our mom is a narcissist. And their response was that they wanted to be left out of it. And I even got called a narc in return because I was making a fuss out of this. And they just wanted me to let it go. And I wish I could tell this story without actually calling out my family in this way. I feel guilty as a first-generation American and a child of immigrants to dare say anything negative about my parents after everything they've done for me. So 2 things can be true at once. I can still be appreciative and love everything that they've done for me, but I can also not put up with their harmful behavior. So the reason I still put up this video is because at one point, I felt like I hit rock bottom. I felt like, why didn't anybody see what I see? I truly felt alone. Like I had no one to talk to. I had no one who could understand what I'm going through. I felt so lonely that at one point I was on the Raised by Narcissists subreddit, just reading posts after posts of people who were dealing with the same thing that I was dealing. I was just commenting on their posts and just sympathizing for everyone on there. At one point I even questioned whether I was making a big deal out of this. My situation wasn't as bad as all these other people. But then I had to remind myself, like, no, what I've gone through is valid. What I've dealt with, it doesn't have to be in comparison to anybody. It just matters how it affected me. And for the record, I want my mom to know that I will always love her. And I'm currently thankful for how things turned out because I wouldn't be the person I am today had it not happened this way. And I'm honestly grateful for what she did because she taught me the biggest lesson of all, which is how to spot harmful behavior and how to recognize that when I'm being mistreated. Because before all this, I assumed that if someone was nice and they apologized, that there's no way that they were actually being mean. Because, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't be mean and just fake apologize and continue being mean. I would give them the benefit of doubt that they didn't intend to be mean or to cause me harm. That's why I believe focusing on the behavior and how you're treated is way more important than knowing if a person is a narcissist or not. Like, you could be like me, not knowing what a narcissist is, but you for sure will know how they make you feel. Because as Dr. Romani says in her book, once is a blip, twice is a coincidence, and 3 times is a pattern. So if they're always apologizing for the same thing, they really don't care about the fact that they're hurting you and they'll lie to get out of it. So I'm sure that there's someone out there who has a mom similar to mine or was in a similar situation. And I'm making this video so you can finally feel understood. Like you're not alone in what you've always known deep down but couldn't explain. When I was going through this with my mom, I just wanted someone to get what I was feeling, to know I wasn't crazy or by myself. These are specifically the behaviors that I've come across that indicate to me that I'm in the presence of someone with narcissistic tendencies. And again, I will link different resources in the description. So one of the things that you can look out for is if you feel drained after interacting with them. They're the type to constantly complain about their life, often exaggerating their problems, being negative, or just being pessimistic. They'll go on talking about how they're misunderstood, underappreciated, or just mistreated. So for example, they'll say, I don't know why I can't make friends. I'm a genuinely nice friend. I just don't get it. Why don't people want to be my friend? There's a reason. They also like to be haters. They like to talk and look down to other people so that they can feel better about themselves. And they like to gossip about others. And they love, love, love to play the victim. And sometimes it's just so that you can make them feel better about themselves. They want you to say, no, your life isn't so bad. Look at the positive. You're this, this, and this. Or they're the type to constantly call you so that they can complain. They'll use you as a therapist and they'll never ask about how you are. And if they do, it's like on a very surface level because it's all about them, remember. And they're also exhausting because they immediately get defensive at the slightest critique, even if it's not about them. You can say something so vague that's not even about them and they'll still get angry because they'll think it's about them because in their world, everything is about them. Another way you can tell if you're in the presence of one is if you feel emotionally manipulated. That means that they'll expect special treatment. They'll make you feel like you should be doing more for them. They'll make you feel responsible for their emotions. They'll make you feel like if you don't do what they say or what they want, they'll stop being your friend or will stop talking to you. They're the type to go from super sweet to super mean in a short time frame. And they'll frequently remind you of how much they suffer or have given up or sacrificed for others without getting anything in return. They love to use money or favors as leverage. They like putting you into an emotional debt where you can't say no to what they ask of you unless you want to be reminded repeatedly of that one time they did a good thing for you. They'll also procrastinate or sabotage you to try to frustrate you so that you could never ask for a favor of them again. Like saying they'll go pick you up from the airport, but wait till the last possible minute to go pick you up. Another thing you need to look out for is when someone is lying. Sometimes it can be harmless, where they'll leave out information of a story so that it can make themselves look better. And other times it might be harmful. Like you can catch them red-handed in a lie and they'll continue to lie to get themselves out of it. They'll do this thing called Darvo. I'll make another video on it separately and go into a deeper detail later. Essentially, this is their go-to tactic. This is where they twist things around, they turn the tables so it seems like you were in the wrong. So if you come across someone that consistently denies doing anything bad, they attack your character, they portray themselves as a victim, then you've been Darvoed. If you ever find yourself confused and you catch yourself apologizing after an interaction where you were confronting them on their behavior, you've been Darvoed. If you've ever left a conversation thinking, what the hell just happened? You've been Darvoed. And if you find yourself in an argument where your heart rate is up and you're finding yourself explaining and defending what you just said, and you can look at them and they look unbothered and calm with a smug look on their face, you've been Darvoed. What you need to know is that no amount of explaining will get you out of this one. Their end goal is to make it look like you're the crazy and overly emotional one. Another thing to look out for is for someone that can never admit they did anything wrong. They don't take accountability or apologize. They frequently break promises. They cancel plans last minute, and they fail to take responsibility for their actions. They'll frequently deny things they said or did. They'll blame you for things you know aren't your fault. If they ever do apologize, they'll always have an excuse for it. They'll either blame it on someone or something else that caused them to behave that way. And they love to use plausible deniability. That's where they claim that they didn't know something bad happened, even though they were involved. And they do that because they know that there's no proof showing that they were responsible. Basically, it's a way to avoid getting in trouble by saying, I don't know what you're talking about. And they do this by, having selective memory. Like if you had asked them to pick you up from the airport and they never showed up, and when you confront them about it, they'll be like, oh, I thought I told you I wasn't going to be able to make it. I'm sorry. But do you see how that I'm sorry is not really being sorry? They also do it by using confusing language. Like if you were to call them out for saying an insult disguised as a joke, they'll say, you're so sensitive. I was just kidding. And that allows them to get away with being mean and make it seem like you're overreacting. Or they'll give you a backhanded compliment, like saying, you're so brave for wearing that swimsuit. It looks good on you. I can never pull it off. Or saying, you're really good at that for someone who didn't go to college. Both of those things allow them to get away with being mean by saying they were just complimenting you. Or if they say a passive-aggressive comment and you get upset by it, they'll reply by saying, you're reading too much into it. I didn't mean anything by it. And that's how they shift the blame onto you by saying you're too sensitive. You're overthinking things. And one dead giveaway that tells you immediately that you're dealing with somebody that can't take accountability is if when you bring up an issue and they try to change the subject so that they can immediately avoid discussing it any further, or they'll change the subject to something related but they don't actually answer the question. So for example, if you call them out on something problematic they did, they'll reply with, I've been going through so much, no one understands how hard this is for me. Or they'll talk in circles and keep bringing up the same thing over and over again, just so that they can exhaust you and make you want to give up and never talk about it again. Or they'll overwhelm you with details or irrelevant information so that they can confuse you, or they'll give you the silent treatment. They'll start off by being so annoyed that you even brought this up and will want you to immediately drop the conversation and say that we'll talk about it at another time. But there is no other time. They're gonna just be silent, make you feel guilty, make you question yourself whether it was even worth bringing it up. Basically, it's so that they can pressure you to apologize or give in, even though you did nothing wrong. And what that does to you, it makes you doubt your abilities, it makes you doubt your worth, and it makes you doubt your decisions. Another thing to look out for is for someone that cannot handle people having different opinions. They do not like being wrong about things. They'll see it as an attack of their intelligence. They'll believe that their views are superior, and they won't stop trying to convince you that they're right and you're wrong. They like to start arguments. They're not looking to exchange ideas. They're trying to be right. So they'll argue until you're confused and heated that you give in just to keep the peace, because their goal is to make you doubt yourself and agree with what they're saying. Another thing to look out for is someone who takes credit for your accomplishments. They would imply to others that without your help, you wouldn't have succeeded. They'd imply that they played a bigger part in your success than they actually did. Or they will remind you that without their money that they lent you, your business wouldn't have existed. Another thing to look out for is that they're competitive. They struggle with genuinely being happy for other people's successes. Like, they will give backhanded compliments, they'll put people down, they'll frequently compare themselves to you and to others. And another thing to look for is for someone that's trying to control all aspects of your life. They want to know who you spend your time with, what you wear, how you think. They'll make you feel bad about yourself after you spend time with them. They're not supportive of your goals, and they discourage you from pursuing your dreams. And lastly, the thing that you should definitely look out for is someone who appears to care for other people. They'll be the type to seem distant when other people are sharing their feelings. They'll avoid discussing their feelings. They will return the conversation back to themselves when they're in a conversation about someone else's problems or emotions. And when they do offer sympathy, it's done in a way that feels like almost performative or insincere. Like, you can tell when they don't really care. Another dead giveaway that you're dealing with someone that doesn't really care about others is if they'll only care about certain people. They'll be disrespectful to people who work in service jobs, like in retail or in the restaurant industry. And it's because they think of those people like they're beneath them. Essentially, what they're saying is that they're rude to people they don't consider important. So what do you do when you realize that you're dealing with someone with narcissistic tendencies? Well, for one, you shut the fuck up. You say nada. You keep it to yourself. You write it down. You start tracking all the times where they say one thing, but they do another. Make sure to pay attention to bad behavior, like if they're putting you down, trying to control you, or just not caring about what you think or feel. Make sure to write down when they blame you for their actions, or when they continue saying mean and hurtful things that they know hurt you, or make note of all the arguments or conflicts that always end up escalating but they never get resolved. Make sure to know if they're being consistently unsupportive or critical of you, if they shut down emotionally or give you the silent treatment, and start observing when they're around people, if they constantly interrupt them, or if they talk over them, or if they're always redirecting the conversation back to them. And make sure to pay attention to how you feel after interacting with them. Do you feel worse about yourself? Do you feel powerless, or that your opinions and needs don't matter? Do you feel like everything is your fault even when it's not? Do you feel pressured to do something you don't want to do or don't believe in? And do you feel like you're always constantly second guessing yourself? Or do you feel like you're being discouraged to improve and work on yourself? Yeah, write all of that down. If a pattern starts forming, that should tell you something. But whatever it tells you, you need to accept that this is who they really are. You can't lie yourself out of this. And if you can, find a therapist if you need one. And another thing you should do is educate yourself on covert narcissism. Because as cheesy as it may be, knowledge is power. If you start reading about how they behave, how they act, you'll become faster at noticing the red flags, and it'll make it that much harder for them to take advantage of you. I feel like nowadays, people always say, don't trust your gut. I feel like it's really important to trust your intuition. That's why I'm also going to make another video on how to trust your intuition. One, because I need to remind myself how to do it, but also because it takes a lot of practice to trust yourself. And that's one of the things that covert narcissists are really good at doing, is making you not trust yourself, making you not trust your decision making, making you not trust your reality. And so they're the ones that benefit from telling you don't trust your gut. Another thing you can do is to question them in a non-threatening way or non-accusing way, just so you can find out how consistent they are with what they say and how accurate their stories that they tell you are. You should also learn how to set clear boundaries. And if you don't know how to set boundaries, I'm going to make a video on that, because I know what they are, but I think I need to make a more well-researched video that kind of lays it all out there so that you understand the purpose and so that you can know what it is and what it's not. So I'll be going over that later, and subscribe if you want to see that. One of the most important and main things you should do is to limit the amount of time you spend with them. You don't necessarily need to go no contact with them. You could just minimize and reduce how much influence they have over you. Don't give them the chance to play mind games on you. Practice emotional detachment. Remind yourself that their actions and words say more about them and their issues than it does about you. Don't let them drag you into an argument over the dumbest thing. Remember, they rely on emotional responses to gain control. So focus on your self-care. And no, that doesn't mean have a luxurious spa day. I mean, it can, but like when people say self-care, it just really means focus on your nutrition, get more sleep, read, do fulfilling hobbies, exercise. And you don't even have to exercise. You could just go for a run or for a walk. It's just basically just focusing on your well-being, focusing on things that bring you joy and make you feel at peace. I know what I like to do for self-care is to read a fun book and to journal. I like journaling with stickers. So now that we know what a person with narcissistic tendencies sounds and behaves like, we need to figure out what to say or respond to them when we come across one. So in the next video, I'll be going over in greater detail about how they turn the table on us using Darvo and how to recognize when it's happening and what to say when we realize what they're doing. So subscribe for the next one, or you can watch this video right here that goes over a bit of my origin story. Okay, bye.